I like puzzles, word puzzles, slide puzzles, pick cross, something to get the mind going, and I also consider myself something of a sophisticated type. I mean, you'll catch me saying dude or bro once a day, but I like learning about the arts. Not out of free will or anything, just when it blindsides me in the middle of the day. And what bigger blindsiding gaming for me than the Professor Layton series? These games made their debut on the Nintendo DS and gained a big following for their perfect blend of storytelling and brain teasers. It's pretty impressive how neither outshines the other, but the reason I typically come back when a new game is released is for the puzzles. But I'm not sure if I ever would have picked up any Layton games had my sister not gotten the second game in the series when it came out. And what's interesting to note, at least for me, is that despite being a puzzle-heavy game, this franchise is best enjoyed when played in chronological order, because the story from one entry to another features characters and relationships that develop across the trilogies. These games are what you might call visual novels, where the game is more of a book than an actual game. It's something that probably sounds boring to gamers who prefer genres with more action in them, but a lot of visual novels can suck you in just the same. So with that out of the way, let me just say that I've never played the first game in the series, Professor Layton and the Curious Village. My sister and I never got around to buying it before we lost interest in these games, and I'm quite curious to see what I missed out on. So we start off the story following Professor Herschel Layton and his apprentice, Luke Triton. While Layton's profession is a bit of a mystery, his biggest traits are his intellect and his chivalrous gentleman persona. Luke has a bit of an attitude, but he looks up to Layton as a role model so he can become a gentleman himself. And something that makes a good duo turn great is when you resonate with one character when you're younger and the other when you grow up. And Layton and Luke may be one of the best examples of this I've encountered. You may not agree with everything these characters say or do, but you will understand both of their perspectives, which makes these two so fun to follow in their adventures. And this adventure begins with the two traveling to a village called St. Mystere, because Layton was invited to help settle an inheritance dispute. But the real reason Layton is coming over is to solve the mystery of the Golden Apple, a family treasure hidden within the village by Baron Reinhold, a wealthy man who passed away 2 months earlier. He said that whoever can find the Golden Apple will get to inherit the whole of his estate. This scenario has some complexity to it since the inheritance dispute is within the Reinhold family, and you know it's got to do with this Golden Apple. Plus, it doesn't make sense that the Baron wouldn't simply leave the money for his family, but I promise the answers to these questions are not what you expect. So once Layton and Luke arrive to St. Mystere, they find out that the village is surrounded by a moat, but since the two were invited by the Reinholds, they're allowed to enter, and right away they meet a few of the village's locals. One thing I find really interesting about the Layton games are the character designs. Just about everyone looks bizarre in some way or another, with over-exaggerated features that remind me of puppets more than anything, but it surprisingly works in the game's favor since there's cohesion in having a freak show cast. You'll probably prefer the normal-looking characters more, but it's the Deeks and Beatrices that you'll remember most. And the town of St. Mystere loves their puzzles. Just about every time you pass somebody, they'll have a puzzle for you to solve, which, as I said before, is where most of the gameplay in the Professor Layton games lie. There's math puzzles, which give a diagram or scenario to solve, like this one where you need to figure out the distance of the line by using the shapes and distances around it. Or this one, which asks how many people will survive this sinking ship if it takes 9 minutes to get to an island and back on a life raft that can carry 5 people, and the ship will sink in 20 minutes, and it's surrounded by sharks with their fin on the trigger. Those are the more extreme examples of math puzzles, and the game has some fun ones to try out, like this one where you get to divide a sheet of stamps so that every slice has the same value, and we might disagree on this one, but I like getting puzzles like 33333, where you have to use the numbers 1 through 9 to make a subtraction equation with an answer of 33,333. I will admit that most of the math problems are duds for me because I don't want to do math. Is that so hard to explain? And sometimes they'll word these puzzles like psychopaths. Like this one puzzle is about some kid asking his old man how old mom is, and the dad's just like, "You know, son, long ago I was twice the age of your beautiful mother. I was just a wee lad at the time, and after a year, I was only 1.5 times older than her. Anyways, I'm 44, and I know you weren't asking me about my age, but You've got a brilliant mind in that little head of yours. Use what I told you to figure it out, or I'll get the wooden spoon out of the drawer and beat your ass because I raised you better than to not know your mother's age. That shit's why I like the interactive puzzles more. This includes slide and jigsaw puzzles, which are my personal favorites, but most of these are pretty fun to complete, like the ones using 3 measuring cups to sort an amount of water into equal halves. I like these puzzles where you're supposed to cut a shape into smaller pieces that usually have to be identical, or there's a few special tiles that need to be divvied out onto each shape. The puzzles where you place queen chess pieces on a board so that every square can be traveled to without another queen in the way are super fun. I like having a couple puzzles where you need to order a list of items using certain conditions, and the ones where you need to find a specific shape in a box full of lines intersecting each other. And for the rest of the puzzles, I guess I'd put them in the bullshit category. Some puzzles are trick questions waiting to give you a noogie when you least expect it. If you have 10 candles and 3 are put out by the wind, how many candles do you have? 3 because you let the other 7 burn completely, but we didn't tell you that. You have 1 match, but you want to light up 3 things. What should you light first? The match, her dirt. If a mouse can pop out a litter of 12 every month after it's 2 months old, how many mice do you have after 10 months? 0, because I'm killing the mouse. These questions just remind me of those stupid Brainiac shows where they ask you to count how many times people pass a basketball, then call you an idiot for not noticing the person wearing a gorilla costume. I'm not saying I get stumped by these every time, but the point I want to make with the puzzles is that they're all fun to solve, but I never feel like a genius when I do. If anything, these games make me feel stupid for not knowing the answer, which has given me this epiphany that it's easy to feel stupid alone, but you need people to be stupid around you to feel smart. And before we return to the game story, I want to mention 3 other things that are relevant to the puzzles. The first 2 are hints and pick-a-rats. If you're struggling on a puzzle, you can use a hint coin to, as the name implies, give you a hint. Every puzzle has 3 hints, but the first one is usually pretty useless, like the game might as well say, thanks for the coin, dipshit. You're better off giving an incorrect answer and seeing the failure hint than spending 1 hint coin, and you'll want to save those coins because they're a limited resource that is only acquirable by tapping specific areas on the map in the overworld. And the dumber you are, the more you'll be relying on these things. Pick-a-rats are points you earn after solving puzzles, and they'll usually tell you how difficult a puzzle will be, since the more challenging ones tend to give away more pick-a-rats. If you give an incorrect answer, the pick-a-rats you can earn from that puzzle will decrease, but fortunately it stops lowering after 2 failures. Pick-a-rats can't be spent, but when you reach certain milestones of them, you unlock bonuses like character bios and a menu to listen to the game's soundtrack and rewatch cutscenes. The last thing about the puzzles is that you don't need to solve them all to beat the game, but there's a couple of roadblocks where you need to have a certain amount solved to progress. And in addition to that, some puzzles can't be accessed after certain chapters have ended. The good news is that they go to Granny Riddleton's jar collection. I don't want to know what she does after the puzzles go in those, let me just solve them in GTFO. So let's get back to the story.
Luke, here's my answer. Critical thinking is the key to success.
After solving a few of the townsfolk's puzzles and doing the heel-toe with Marco, Layton and Luke arrive at Reinhold Manor, where they are first greeted by Raymond, a servant of the Reinhold family, as well as Matthew the butler. And Matthew looks so out of the zone, like are they abusing him? And things don't look good right away, since he gives us a puzzle on behalf of Lady Dahlia. It's like, hey, see this cute little doggy made out of matches? I want you to kill it! Make it look like it got hit by a car! I've got my eye on y'all.
Oh? Oh, you must be Professor Layton, I presume. It's an honor to make your acquaintance.
Oh no, the pleasure's all mine.
Oh, no!
Luke!
Claudia, darling! Come back, sweetie!
So before we can get any business accomplished on this golden apple, Dahlia kicks out Layton and Luke to chase after her cat. But on the way out, they meet Gordon, the Baron's brother, and Simon, their nephew. Who are Simon's parents? I don't know, but it would be a darn shame if something bad happened to this hoity-toity arse. And one last pit stop in the manor are these paintings of the Baron and his daughter, Flora. Her whereabouts are unknown, but that's because some people don't know how to ask questions on their quest for a cat, on their quest for pussy. One question they couldn't ask was the source of that noise that made Claudia run off in the first place. Well, it appears to be related to this mysterious man we see talking to himself after crashing some sort of machine into St. Mystere. He's shredded in black mystery aura, but he appears to know about the village and Layton, so it's quite obvious the two will interact at some point. Another oddity that occurs is the crank to the drawbridge has disappeared, which means Layton and Luke are locked in. Is this the work of that man, or is this a trap by someone who may or may not enjoy dog slaughter? Claudia is eventually retrieved, and you wouldn't believe what happens next. Murder. So Simon got clopped, and investigating the scene is Inspector Chelmy, who is pretty hush-hush about sharing information. But the only clues we have are a tiny cog with an insignia on it, and Raymond has vanished from the scene. Layton and Luke go around the village asking if anyone has seen him, and while nobody has, they do hear a rumor about an old man who abducts people. I hope you're following along, because right now there's a million things to worry about, and the golden apple is the least important. Oh, and did I forget to mention this massive tower at the rear end of the village that goes completely ignored? I'm not saying the writing has been bad so far, but it feels really unfocused. And then we find Raymond. My sister says this picture lives rent-free in her head.
Luke, sir, hold it there.
Right behind you.
Raymond is back at the manor, but doesn't remember anything that happened, and Layton is just like, okay. Luke, do you want to go look for that apple now? So they wander around the village some more and wind up near the tower, which everybody is afraid of. Sometimes it makes a loud noise, unlike the one that scared off Claudia, and is just begging us to explore it, but there's a wall of buildings in the way. A woman stops them, but the pointed mysterious man grins loud enough from around the corner for her to hear him, and she runs away, dropping a ticket for the Ferris wheel in the park. The park is abandoned for no particular reason, and interestingly, it was commissioned by the Baron for his daughter. A little detail I've left out is that the entirety of St. Mystere's land belonged to the Baron, so it puts a fat question mark on if the finder of the golden apple gets ownership of the village. But first, Layton and Luke need to get chased by the Ferris wheel, and what a coinkydink because it destroyed a locked-up entrance to the sewers in the middle of the pond which holds a key to the tower. And before we go there, it's time to reveal who murdered Simon.
Isn't it obvious? If there is any criminal element involved in this case, then it is you, sir. What? That's absurd.
I skipped over it, but Layton found a newspaper that featured an article about Chelmy that contradicted him saying he hated sweets earlier by saying he loves sweet potatoes. Here's a puzzle. In what world are sweet potatoes considered sweets? There's a couple other reasons for Chelmy to be sus, but you wouldn't believe it if I told you Chelmy isn't the murderer. And that's because Chelmy was actually Don Paolo. This is the worst villain reveal ever. They just replaced an unlikable character with an unlikable character that the game doesn't even bother telling us about. And what makes this worse is that Don didn't kill Simon either. Anyways, let's bring that key to the tower, which slots into the wall and opens a massive entrance. And upon entering, the duo meets Bruno, the old man who snatched Raymond. Bruno reveals a massive plot twist, and while it answers a lot of mysteries from this tale, it's also unsettling to a degree when you stop to think about it. The twist is that all of the inhabitants of St. Mystere are robots. So unfortunately, I was spoiled on this twist since I looked up this game's story a long time ago, but there's so many breadcrumbs of journal entries about the creation of them that makes me think this was super obvious. But let me know if you think it wasn't obvious in the comments. While Matthew was the first robot, I'd say the history of St. Mystere's robots began with the death of the Baron's wife. When she passed, the Baron got Bruno to build a robot that looked and behaved exactly like her, but it scared his daughter, so its memory and personality were reset. And I guess the Baron had the foresight to know his own death was imminent, so the townsfolk of St. Mystere were built as a means to protect Flora, as well as keep people away from misfortunes with their obsessive sharing of puzzles. And since everyone's a robot, we know Simon didn't die, he just malfunctioned. Raymond was abducted to get repaired by Bruno, and the loud noises from the tower came from the machines that build and repair the robots. And like I said, this scenario is really unsettling. It makes the Baron this tragic yet insane character who both creates a society for his daughter while simultaneously abandoning her. Bruno is just as crazy, essentially playing the role of an invisible god, and man do I sure hope he's looking after Flora too, assuming she's still around. And to answer that mystery, she is. Hidden at the top of the tower like a princess waiting to be rescued, even though we saw her at the base a couple hours ago.
It's you! What's this? What's going on here?
My boy, what you see here is the golden apple herself.
Yep, Flora was the golden apple all along, and the Baron's fortunes belonged to her. But first, terrorism. The Don busts out his physics-defying helicopter and attempts to knock over the tower, but he is no match for the mastermind of HiJello Layton, who MacGyvers a hang glider out of furniture that not only saves himself and Flora, but destroys the helicopter. And Luke dies, but is replaced by a robot. It's the only way this makes sense. The tower fell too fast for him to climb all the way down and escape. Flora reveals this apple-shaped birthmark that is the key to a secret room in the manor, and then she decides to move in with the Laytonator. Imagine traveling to a village to solve a mystery about someone's fortunes and coming home with her daughter. And she doesn't even want the money. I would be pissed. Put her ass in the orphanage. So that's the story to Professor Layton and the Curious Village, but there's a few more game mechanics I want to talk about. Like after Simon's death, you'll start collecting pieces of a painting, gizmos, and furniture after solving puzzles. The painting is a jigsaw puzzle that when completed shows an illustration of the Baron's wife and Claudia. The gizmos build a dog that helps you find hint coins. The furniture can be allocated to Layton or Luke, and since I respected Professor more, I gave him all the furniture. And all Luke gets is a teddy bear, ya baby. So we're pimping Layton's crib. He's got a bed on his bed, 2 rugs, a TV with the TV stool, and you can't watch your TV without a kettle, and nothing screams gentleman more than a fossil and a random vial. So actually the goal is to give both characters furniture they like, and trade until they're both satisfied. When you put something in someone's room, they'll give you some feedback, but the feedback is pretty awful since Layton likes most of the furniture and Luke hates just about everything. But when you give everyone the right furniture, as well as completing the painting and dog, you unlock some more puzzles in the game's bonus tab. These are meant to be some of the hardest puzzles in the game, but if you can get this far, you can probably push through them all, or play the guessing game, because that works eventually. Some of these bonus puzzles are also unlocked by completing the game, and if these 12 are solved, 3 more are unlocked, including Royal Escape, which is the game's most difficult sliding puzzle. I used a guide on this, but only because I'm using up valuable gigabytes on my hard drive, trying to get footage of me clearing it. And while 135 puzzles is more than enough for this game, additional puzzles can be downloaded every week to sharpen your brain. Unfortunately, this can't be accessed anymore, but it's not a huge loss since you can find them all on the internet. And last of all is the Hidden Door. In the sequel, Professor Layton and the Diabolical Box, the game gives you a code that can be entered into this game, which unlocks some pieces of concept art. This game also gives you a code for the Diabolical Box, but we'll have to wait to use it. So there you go, Professor Layton and the Curious Village, a game that anyone can play where its difficulty is determined by your wisdom. If you've got an itch for a visual novel or an edutainment game, this is the series to pick up. Thanks for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave a like as well if the channel grow, and subscribe to get updates on my uploads as soon as they happen. But until then, I will see you all next time.